My name is Chris Townsend. Welcome to the Best Esports Industry Podcast. The episode is about the PESL framework. Some of you may be familiar, but not to worry, whether you are familiar or not. Today I shall take you all on a journey as we understand the framework, the PESL framework that is being used to shape and mould the industry. So, getting straight into it, PESL is an acronym that stands for political, economic, social, technological, legal and environmental. So it's basically considering all of these factors. So first of all, political, which broadly speaking are those driven by government actions and policies. It's typically discussed in relation to matters such as government policies, international trade, corporate taxation. We have economic, which is defined as of, relating to or based on the production, distribution and consumption of goods and services. So economics also in reference to finances as well. Sports examples of this could be obviously monetization, getting money in. Next up, we have social. In the modern world where social media has taken over, communication has definitely changed. A study from Shafee 2024 says 62.3% of the world's population use social media daily, with the average user spending 2 hours and 23 minutes on social media. Of this magnitude, it is clear that this will have a huge impact around the world. It has been a huge factor within the growth of esports, especially over more recent years, with its perks but also its cons. And in my opinion, this is mainly due to it being unregulated. So, next up we have technology. Technology is the framework of the whole of esports. So everything from the software to components and peripherals. Without technology, esports would basically not exist, and especially not at the caliber which we see, major league tournaments today. Legal, defined as a set of rules that are created and are enforceable by social or government institutions in order to regulate behaviour. In relation to esports, this can be anything relating to the following examples, so like international visas, player contracts, tax. Finally, we have environmental. In terms of the PESL framework, this often relates to how businesses impact the wider world. It's often discussed in relation to their carbon footprint and emissions. So, PESL as a whole. PESL, in terms of business, encourages the development of external and strategic thinking. It can enable an organisation to anticipate future business threats, take action to avoid them and minimise their impact. But how does this relate to esports, I hear you ask? Esports is an industry that is still in development. Because of this, it is absolutely essential that tasks are carried out in the correct fashion. I believe that the foundation of doing so is through the use of the PESL framework to establish a steady foundation to allow for growth going into the future. As seen from a study from GOF 2024 that looked at the current growth of the esports market on a global scale and how it can be forecast to the future, they found that the current market is valued at 1.98 billion. By the end of 2032, they forecast that this number would jump just shy of 11 billion. When looking at how this compares to traditional sports, from Global Sport Insights estimate the global sport value around $1.4 trillion, which is crazy. More so when you compare this figure back to the original 2 billion estimate value for esports. So, with that being said, let's get into the specifics. Political. So the war in Russia against Ukraine saw repercussions on a global scale affecting a multitude of pathways and industries. In specific relation to esports, in an article from Dexerto titled The Esports Iron Curtain and How the War in Ukraine has Changed Esports, outlined issues, in particular, visa issues. The CSGO major held in 2021 was in Belgium. During this time, Belgium, along with other countries, took a strong political stance surrounding this war, saying that there could be increasing scrutiny on visa applications, something that would likely lead to visas taking longer to process, increase the number of denials issued. The CSGO roster featured 5 Russian players. Due to the Russia-Ukraine war, several Russian nationals are facing issues in obtaining the required visas. With the invasion of Ukraine not showing any sign of stopping, the sanctions issued against Russia continued and bled into all industries. In traditional sports, a similar instance occurred within F1. As summarised in an ESPN article, during the 2021 F1 season, driver of Haas F1 team Nikita Mazepin, son of Russian oligarch, was dropped from the team along with sponsors due to their Russian ties. Next up, economic. Throughout the esports industry, the primary source of income for companies and individuals comes in from various different avenues. Most common of these avenues being content creation, partnerships, sponsors, ticket sales. To date, as per OBS Bot, Twitch is the #1 streaming platform in the world for gaming, with around 260,000 daily users. 2022, Twitch saw a total revenue of $164.96 million. However, as per an article from Forbes, who say we are now in a new age of streaming and content creation, with services such as Kick and Rumble being made, leading to a rise in the platforms and the monetary take-home and influence that they have. Now, while money comes in through many different avenues, such as content creation, businesses also lose money due to all sorts of reasons. Throughout recent years inside the esports industry, the most notable impact to pinpoint would be staff layoffs, referred to by many as the esports winter. Hitmarker found in a recent study that the number of total jobs in gaming declined by over 19% from 2021 to 2022. Companies have largely blamed the layoffs on focus. Esports and gaming companies pursued ventures outside of their core business, which are no longer sustainable as they once were. For example, esports organisation 100 Thieves sold its Juvie energy drink business and spun off its game development studio following layoffs in 2023. Riot Games laid off almost 50 people in the early days of 2023 due to strategic shifts. In 2024, 11% of its workforce has been laid off. Epic Games has laid off 16% of its workforce, and in January 2024, communication platform Discord has laid off 17% of their workforce. Going into the future, it is clear that this needs to change. Social. For example, within industries all over the world, over the past decade, there has been a shift of focusing on a more diverse and inclusive workforce. During 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic, this saw a significant drop in female workers compared to male. However, despite this, in the esports industry today, with the rise of women in corporate jobs, companies have launched initiatives to promote and support this. An example of this is British Esports, the governing body of esports in the UK, with the launch of Women in Esports back in 2019. However, this doesn't seem to be anywhere at the level it should or needs to be. Within esports, women face quite a lot of troubles in gaming, be it lack of adequate representation, injustice in professional esports and unequal distribution of awards, questioning their skills as players, and even sexual objectification and harassment. Furthermore, in relation to women in esports, back in October 2023, British Esports announced their partnership with Saudi Esports Federation, which received a significant amount of initial backlash due to their opposing views. However, with this being said, British Esports put out the following statement. This could be beneficial and establish a positive change going into the future, but only time will tell. Technology. Despite this, as a result of technology and technological growth, other issues have risen too, to divide within esports. As I see the combination of these factors: Factor 1, access to technology. Factor 2, regional disparities. Some regions lack the necessary infrastructure to support gaming, let alone competitive esports. In Africa, 95% or around 150 million players are mobile players, comparing this to Europe, which is around 36%. Finally, socio-economic barriers. Economic disparities can further exaggerate this digital divide, with lower income individuals and communities in accessing and affording gaming technology and new popular titles. Despite technology being an absolute essential factor for the growth and development of the whole planet, along with this, it's also come a huge issue: e-waste and emissions. However, this falls under environmental, so more on this later. Last but not least, legal. Gambling within esports has been prominent since the early years. However, restrictions on gambling and betting on esports were quickly put in place in countries such as China. Now, seeing this, game publishers realised and pivoted in a different direction. Loot boxes, originally seen in Overwatch, are rewards which can be bought and virtual currencies or real-world money. As a result of these loot boxes, concerns have been raised about whether they encourage gambling-like behaviours, particularly among children. In CSGO, the current skin item market is currently valued at a whopping $3 billion. As previously mentioned, some countries such as Belgium and the Netherlands are currently working on a ban to prevent these loot boxes reaching the younger. China came in thick and fast with these restrictions on loot boxes as part of the Mobile Game Content Standard 2016. As a result of this meant loot boxes cannot be purchased using either real or virtual currency. Box contents must be acquirable through other means, and loops are not allowed and have to disclose the odds for individual items in loot boxes. Introduce restrictions outlining the use of corpses, skeletons, blood. Like China, as well as others, making restrictions surrounding loot boxes, within the US and the UK, loot boxes as well as sports betting for esports is still allowed. From the BBC says that loot boxes are used like sound effects and the odds sort of chance of getting a desired item. Gambling, overall market of these loot boxes, and seeing how much people spend on these games, I believe there should be policies put in place to limit this as much as possible. Finally, environmental. The gaming industry's carbon footprint stands at 81 million tonnes of CO2, but it doesn't specifically break down how much is emitted by video gaming as a whole. The estimation shows how much video games and big tech companies emitted last year, which is even larger than what many small countries emitted. once again showing how certain avenues don't seem to be sustainable for companies in the long run. 2022, only 3 out of the 34 largest game companies were able to reduce their carbon footprint. When comparing these numbers to traditional sports, such as football, during the 2022 FIFA World Cup, throughout the event, 3.6 million tonnes of CO2 was produced. E-waste, otherwise referred to as techno-trash, also occupies a notable impact into the environment. Techno-trash ends up in landfills full of toxic materials, including heavy metals that can easily seep into ground and ultimately get into groundwater supplies. To quote, computers and other devices are composed of a cocktail of chemicals and heavy metals. In a study that measured this, they found that 80% of children in the nearby town had dangerously elevated blood lead levels. This is not even mentioning the people who have to assemble the product. PESTLE framework going into the future, companies and stakeholders need to prioritise sustainability, working on a more select number of projects and doing them well rather than a huge number of projects and settling for mediocrity. As a result of this, we can achieve the steady and sustainable growth and raise the value which will benefit everyone in and outside the esports industry. With all of this, I hope that you can gauge the impact that this framework has had on businesses when considered and compared with other factors in order to develop a wider perspective and a worldview and how to implement this into growing a business. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I've been Chris Townsend, that's all from me, and I shall see you next time.